We're just giving folks a chance to join the webinar. Let's go ahead and start. Good morning and welcome to the Department of Family and Support Services Girls Thrive, a Culture, Identity, and Wellbeing Initiatives RFP webinar. The release date was June 9th, 2026. The due date for this RFP for responses is July 7th, 2026. Just a few housekeeping rules. Due to the volume of participants, everyone has been placed on mute. However, if you have any questions, please use the questions box and we'll respond to questions at the midpoint and end of the presentation. Also, please use the questions box to notify us of any technical issues. And please be advised that this webinar is being recorded and anything stated at the webinar is not intended to change the solicitation document. And any changes will be in writing in the form of an addendum issued by the Department of Family and Support Services. And the purpose of this webinar is to provide information for the solicitation. A copy of the recording will be posted on the DFSS YouTube channel with a link to the recording and a PDF of the PowerPoint slides on the DFSS webpage under the Alerts and/or Funding Opportunities tabs. Please give it up to 5 business days to upload. DFSS retains the right to share a list of registrants to this webinar along with their contact and organizational information at our discretion. At this time, we're going to introduce the youth department who will be hosting the webinar.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Hampton, Senior Director of Programs, Prevention and Intervention.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexandra Carrillo, Project Manager under Lisa Hampton.
And I am Jillian Black. I am the Procurement Proposal Coordinator here at DFSS. At this time, we're going to go through the purpose of the RFP, the background, information about the scope and program description, the selection criteria, timeline, technical assistance for applicants in e-procurement, and then one last opportunity for us to ask and answer questions. And at that being said, I'm going to pass it over to the youth department.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Jillian stated, I want to be clear at the very beginning that this recording does not replace the requirement that you read through the RFP carefully, so you understand all of the elements and the goals and purposes that we're looking for. The purpose of this RFP is we are looking to fund delegate agencies or providers, qualified providers, to deliver a 3-month cohort-based gender responsive program for self-identified girls 13 to 19 in Chicago that strengthen their cultural identity, support holistic wellness, and build social emotional skills through early prevention focusing programs. I want to say at this time, we purposely use the language self-identified girls. We are not making, and in the RFP, we explain what that means, but we want to make sure that this is gender responsive and gender expansive, and programming should reflect that. Next slide. What's our background here? This particular programming is new, but we do have a history of doing some dedicated federal programming around working with girls in different institutional settings. This programming reflects our mission to provide tailored experiences and supports for empowering girls to thrive. As I stated, we have multitudes of programs that are available within the youth services, and but this is and that is offered to girls as well as emerging adults. We wanted to make sure that this is a dedicated experience within our portfolio. Programming support is up to 2.4 million. I will say that is through the life, and we'll go into this a little bit, but we already stated in the RFP that the dollars will be prorated. So we'll talk a little bit more as you try to put together your budget. Once again, just a sample budget for your application, and what those guidelines are. And then programming is open to all girls 13 to 19 across the city of Chicago. Next slide. Thank you. The goal is to deliver to structured cohort-based curriculum, like I said, over a 3-month period that guides participants through reflection, self-build, skill building, and connections. Programs must equip girls with the tools, resources, and supports to assess areas of strength and areas of growth in their life, strengthening self-awareness and overall well-being. Next slide. Our target population is we are really looking for, first and foremost, girls who are not already engaged in programming or may be engaged in programming in a little limited space. We know that the data tells us, which is also in the RFP, that oftentimes young girls are serving in paternalistic roles. So we want to make sure that your programming is flexible and allows you can access girls who wouldn't necessarily have access to our general programming hours. It should be open to anyone across the city of Chicago. So you as a provider should be able to and open to serving, and will have to tell us sort of who you will be planning to serve. We are not making any restrictions around community areas for this particular RFP. And that it's for girls identified 13 to 19. So that's 13 or 19 at the start of this program. That is the age range. What is our model structure? So I want to just, there's a lot here. I just want to once again reiterate, this is just to go over the key points for you to think about and on as you're putting together and designing your program. This is in no way should be a place that you should read every program requirement portion of the actual RFP document that is available on iSupplier and attached with the application questions. So the model structure is we would like for you to have a recruitment strategy that prioritizes youth who are not currently engaged in services and may face barriers to participation. The idea is that you deliver a cohort-based program model for a minimum of 3 months. There's 12 weeks on here. This needs to be 3 months of programming. Each cohort needs to serve anywhere between 20 and 60 participants. As I stated earlier, we already know that this will be prorated for the year. So anyone who is awarded will get an award for the fall, and then we'll renegotiate what the terms, the dollars, and the numbers are at the top of 2027. Programming must be intentionally centered and affirming around cultural identity, supporting participants in developing self-awareness, and a deeper understanding of who they are. I do want to stress that this is a program that's open to all girls. So for example, if you have young women who are, it's not limited by race. So people need to think about cultural identity and self-awareness across all types of the diversity of all young women in their programming. Programming must be gender responsive, culturally responsive, and grounded in positive youth development principles. Programming must be conducted outside of primary and secondary school time. So once again, this is not a in-school program. As well, we're looking at before school, after school, weekends, really wanting it to be as flexible as the young women hopefully tell you their availability is, and the program should be designed that way. Next slide. Also under program requirements, the cultural identity and wellness curriculum. I just want to remind folks here, you are required to attach a copy of an overview. Some of you, the system may not take your entire curriculum because of the pure size of it, but you need to attach something that lets us know, or so we can review the curriculum to make sure that we understand how is it meeting the objectives that we're asking for. And I want to preface that because you want to give yourself time to be able to upload if it's a very large document. So I either advise people to do an overview. If you have a link, this will be the one time in an RFP process that we'll actually go to a link to look at something. But think about making sure it's a curriculum. Whatever you attach clearly connects to the items that are listed here, which is that the curriculum must be structured. It has to have activities that support cultural identity, exploration, self-awareness, confidence building, healthy relationship development, and it needs to include some education on gender-based violence. It needs to have social emotional learning, including emotional regulation, communication and relationship building skills. So for those of you who are in the social and emotional learning space, just the basics around just social and emotional competencies is really what we're looking for here. Including structured opportunities for peer connection, community building, and identity affirming dialogue. Once again, what the research shows us is that often young women are isolated. So you want to make sure that they're building a peer connection, that there's some idea around community building and some self-affirming dialogue and activities that are linked together here. And then it should lastly incorporate practices that foster safe and inclusive supportive spaces for discussion. For the staffing portion, we at DFSS did not tell you what the staffing requirement is. We are asking you to look at the curriculum, best practice, and for you to tell us what you think the staffing pattern is based on the number of young people you're planning to serve, the expertise. What we hope is that you're looking at individuals who have experience in positive youth development, have experience working in a cultural identity or a wellness program, and particularly working with young women. Next slide. Thanks. Resources and connections. I do want to clarify this because when you read it in the RFP, it makes it sound like we're asking you to do case management, and I want to be really explicit here that we are not. That we do expect, though, that people will have have a mechanism for identifying participants' needs and ensuring referrals are met as needed. This is particularly around mental health supports and anything related to gender-based violence or safety. Providers are not expected, like I said, to provide case management, but if there are opportunities that if there are opportunities within the programming for you to be able to make a referral to services, either in the middle of that programming or at the end, we ask that you do that and that you have a way to explain what that looks like to ensure you're able to make that handoff. And then there are some direct sort of support resources that align with program goals to reduce participants, barriers to participants. So thinking about transportation assistance and other incentives. I don't necessarily love the word incentives, rewards for young people to encourage, particularly young women, to encourage them to be able to participate in the 3 months of programming. Because of the population that we're working with, we're also encouraging people to talk about and to be able to provide things like hygiene kits and emergency supplies, thinking about the gender expansiveness of young women, and any program materials that they might need to participate, whether that's writing materials, journals, pens, anything that's required by the curriculum. Participant expectations. We will be looking at and hoping to see that participants are able to maintain consistent engagement throughout the 12-week program cycle. And I strongly encourage that when folks are awarded, if also tracking what are those barriers if they're not able to do that. Once again, those sorts of things help us think about additional programming changes. This is also a time for you to talk about anything else that maybe we haven't thought about that you already have in place that would allow participants to be able to be engaged for the 3 months. We do want to see regular attendance. We will be tracking that. And then also just looking at what are your strategies to support retention in the process. And then that there's some meaningful, developmental, appropriate, and responsiveness to participant needs. Once again, we're not asking you to case manage, but if an issue develops within a cohort, we want to know what are your mechanisms in order for you to be able to support that young person, whether that's a handoff to someone else for services along the way. Data entry and reporting, as always, you must have a database that is collecting data, maintaining and reporting all requirements around performance data and alignment with DFSS guidelines. I say this just as a reminder, CitySpan, which is our database that we require you to put documents in, is not your database. All providers should have their own database where they're looking and doing their own data, and they're looking at particular things related to your programming. CitySpan is just our way of making sure that you put data into our system. But how are you collecting that data? What are you looking at? What are the trends you're seeing? How are you evaluating the data? That is going to be something we're going to be asking you to elaborate on in your application questions. And that you must provide sort of structured assessments, methods, pre and post reflections, or valid tools. Some of these things might be required within your curriculum. And then having a way to track those. DFSS will work with the awarded delegates to determine what these tools look like, if we will provide them, or if we will ask you to deliver those to participants. Next slide. What are our outcomes? There are a ton of outputs and outputs for this particular model. You can review those in the actual solicitation document. Here, I just put the outputs so you understand what we are primarily looking at over the time period of when girls have concluded their programming. These are the things that we're going to be looking at, is that 80% of participants demonstrate some increased understanding of pride and their cultural identity from when they initially started in the programming. 75% of participants report an increase in sense of belonging, whether that's in that could be culture, that could be school, that could be community, family. 70% of participants demonstrate improvement in at least 2 domains of well-being. That can be there's a dimensions of domain in your solicitation. So we want to see at least 2 increases of well-being, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, or social. I would also add spiritual on there as well. 70% of participants demonstrate an improved communication, relationship building, or conflict resolution skills. Those are the outcomes. As 70% of participants will report an increase in self-esteem and confidence. 80% of enrolled participants complete the full cohort program. Participants attend at least 75% of scheduled program sessions. And then 70% of participants demonstrate increased ability to make healthy decisions and navigate challenges. 85% of participants report satisfaction with program quality and relevance. I will say in the RFP, you have all the outcomes, you have all the outputs. We will work with the delegate agencies to come up with a final comprehensive list of all of them, given the time frame we're asking you to deliver this work. So, next slide. What is our selection criteria? So these are the things that you're going to be evaluated on. These are the application questions. I will say the way the solicitation is set up, if you print it out, which I strongly, once again, encourage everyone to print the entire solicitation out. The system sometimes does have technical difficulties, and you don't want to be trying to download this 2 days before this application's due. I suggest you print it out. The front part of the solicitation is always the application questions. Do not jump in there. The back part is the actual RFP solicitation. You need to read that first and then go back to the application questions. Within that, there is a selection criteria. These are the areas, the questions are all aligned. These are the areas that we are looking on. These are the areas that we are scoring you. This is a competitive process. And so we want to remind people that this is about looking at qualified providers. This is not a startup program. So we're looking for people who already have experience in delivering this kind of programming, in particular to this population. And if you are thinking about it, we strongly encourage people to also think about doing some collaborations if you to make your applications a little bit stronger if you don't want to go it alone. Community involvement is the first area. Once again, this is just a overview of the questions we're going to ask you. Every single question. This particular section has a lot of questions. We summarized it as best we could, so you can actually visibly see it. But in the community involvement section, which often for us relates to diversity, looks at your ability to work with culturally competence, those sorts of things in this area. We are asking questions about the target population, what you know about them, what does services look like now, why services, and what are you seeing in particular? So if you're going to target a certain area, you need to talk about what that looks like for that community area. Just general demographics is not helpful for us. We want, once again, this is for City of Chicago, so we want to know what is the experience of the population, but also what do you know? And what does your data tell you from the work you've already done? Organizational capacity. Do you have the infrastructure? In particular, do you have staffing? Do you have professional development that actually is that already encourages to be responsive in the way that you're working with self-identified girls in your services? And then DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. We want to be making sure that what is your policy? What are your current programs that support girls' identity, safety, well-being, and cultural needs? And then what is your board involvement and communication strategy about your DEI action plans or policies, and how those are communicated out to community and to board and others? Next slide. Our second selection criteria is organizational capacity. This is looking at organizational capacity across the board. So not so much tied to particularly the programming, but what is your capacity to be able to execute these programs successfully? So your staffing pattern, how you plan to recruit, hire, or retain, what is the qualifications of the individual, and how does that connect with your overall mission and the way that you're doing your gender responsive work as an organization? Fiscal management. At the end of the day, I tell people you can be the most passionate advocate about a population. This is city dollars. We are stewards of taxpayer dollars. At the end of the day, we want to know that there's a fiscal management and oversight that is in place to ensure that these dollars are spent exactly the way that it's intended to in the solicitation. And then lastly, data management. Once again, what is your database system? How do you collect data? How do you analyze that data? How do you store that data? And what's the process you have in place to ensure that you're using that data for programming purposes? Next slide. Third is strength of proposed program. This is the area where we do spend the most time. It's worth the most points. I will strongly suggest at this point in time, please do not AI us around this programming. We want to hear in your own words the programming you're doing, and general statements from AI about programming do scream out to us on the page. I just want to be 100% transparent here. So this is an area that I strongly encourage people to really work as a team to figure out how you're going to respond to this section. Do not allow AI to just write this section for you. For your program model activities, once again, based on the curriculum that you've chosen, what is your structure going to look like? This is, once again, a pretty open RFP compared to some of our other ones. you're telling us, we're not picking the curriculum for you. You are telling us, how are you justifying the curriculum that you chose? Why did you choose this curriculum? What does it look like? What is the 12 weeks going to look like of programming? What is, if your curriculum supports reflections, what does that look like? All of these things. So making sure that you address all of the key points in here is session frequency, curriculum, reflection, skill building, peer connections, and identity affirming dialogue. We also want to see that there's a holistic and cultural approach to that. So once again, this is where whatever curriculum that you pick, you're going to be having to identify what is it's going to look like from a programming perspective around the integration of wellness, and cultural identity and development in a safe and inclusive space. This is also where you're talking about your recruitment strategy, describing how you're intentionally reaching girls not connected to services, including your outreach methods, any partnerships, and how those are culturally and gender responsive approaches. So how are your recruitment strategies linked back to, once again, this piece? And then partnerships and coordination. Once again, in doing any kind of programming with young people, what are some of the services or partnerships you need? So as you think about, in addition to hygiene kits, those sorts of things, are there partnerships that you'll need potentially with health clinics or any kind of agencies that you might need to just do, once again, do a referral or talk with a young person and a family about a referral. Just sort of what those look like. We're not asking for MOUs. We're not asking for extensive part, and this is not partnerships that you want to have. These are partnerships that already exist and have already been working in your response here. And then what is the safety plan? As with any programming, not just with self-identified girls, with really any programming, should always have, what is your safety plan? How does that safety plan explained to participants? How is it structured among the staff? And then what are the policies and procedures to ensure that there is a mechanism to ensure physical, emotional, and psychological safety for all participants and staff? Next. Our next area is performance management and outcomes. This includes a discussion about performance outcomes and measures for previous programs. And I want to stress, we are asking here for previous programs. If you currently haven't run a girls program and you have something similar, you can provide that data, but we want to be clear that we're really looking for individuals who have experience delivering this type of model to self-identified girls. So we want you to describe your current performance outcomes as they relate to the outcomes in this RFP. So it's not just, I don't want to hear about employment outcomes. I don't want to hear about those things. We want to talk about a sense of safety. We want to talk about program dosage. We want to talk about competencies, well-being, connectedness to staff, to peers. Those are some of the data points we're looking at, and what measures will you take to ensure you can meet the performance outcomes in this RFP? So whatever data you provide, how is that connected to the outcomes in this RFP? And then what challenges do you anticipate in these outcomes? And if you are not currently providing that information, once again, using a similar model that still aligns with the outcomes from this RFP. We also want you to describe how you're leveraging data to identify areas of improvement. Once again, it's very helpful here to tell us what data systems you're using, how you're collecting feedback from participants, and then how you're analyzing that data to either identify a problem, and then how you use steps to improve or make changes, and then what were the outcomes after that change in using your data. Next slide. And lastly, reasonable cost, budget justifications, and leverage of funds. As with most things DFSS, I always tell people we are not a foundation. So you are not writing a proposal to tell us this is what we want to do, and then we just fund whatever you want to do. We have been very clear about the things that we want to fund, and basically it's whether or not you're able to fit within that category and be able to provide those services. It also means that we don't necessarily cover all of the continuous costs, of an entire program. So we want to have this section 1 for you to complete a budget exercise. As a reminder, this is a budget exercise for the purpose of scoring for this RFP. It is not your final budget. If you are selected as a delegate, you will go through a budget process again with us. So I just want to put that, be clear about that here. But we want to see that you can be reasonable about how you put your budget together. Also having an understanding of what does it mean to be able to provide services for self-identified girls 13 to 19 and any potential ancillary supports, including things like transportation, training, anything that will strengthen the outcome from young women in the program. So we will also ask you for detailed regarding your cash flow, line of credit in particular. We are the city. We have a slow start when it comes to reimbursement. So how will you cover those initial expenses at the start of this program is something you'll need to be able to explain to us. Next slide. We want to just flag some attachments that for folks here, but once again, they're also outlined or they're reminders within the solicitation. Be sure to attach a summary of your curriculum. And it says you can attach other performance documents, but I will say we don't require them. The biggest thing we are requiring is the curriculum, and that could be a summary. Like I said, some of you, we don't need the whole curriculum. It might break the system for you to actually try to upload it, but we need a summary of it, whether that's something you get from, if it's a curriculum that you've purchased, it's a curriculum that you've created yourself. We just need something that also identifies very clearly how it aligns with positive youth development, all of the things that are aligned with the mission here at DFSS as it talks about serving young people. Be assured to attach organizational budget. And then you want to make sure all the program requirements are addressed. Just flagging for people, do not attach MOUs. We don't need those here, or any political letters. It's actually, you run the risk of having your RFP disallowed if you attach anything political. So no letters from any council members, anyone who's from a government body needs to be attached to your application. Next slide. And we're about to close out this section. We'll take a break. So if people have any questions, please remember to put them in the actual Q&A chat box so we can answer those. So the evaluation process, once again, people will be evaluated your proposals on the strength of the proposal and responsiveness to the selection criteria. We do not have community areas, so this is a competitive process. A failure to submit a complete proposal or response fully to any requirements may make your submission subject to rejection. If there are things that we feel do not give people an edge, we may reach out to ask for clarification. When we do that, we're going to reach out to the person you listed as your point of contact in iSupplier. So be mindful, whoever is listed as that point of contact, are they going to be available between now and through the end of July in case there's any questions that might come up? We usually have a very short turnaround time, so we just want to make sure whoever you list as your point of contact, you need to know that they're going to be available, because that's the person we're going to be communicating with if we have any questions. And like I said before, do not AI your way through this proposal. I think AI is great. It's a good tool to use to support work you're doing, but it cannot replace a person actually writing about the work you're doing. And so we see that all the time here. We see tons of RFPs here. We're very clearly seeing that and able to identify when people have sort of just allowed AI to write everything for them. And it's just very general. So I just want to flag that for people as you're thinking about it. Great tool to use to help you synthesize and to make your content more stronger, but don't just allow that to write it without you actually reading through and understanding how does this align with the questions we're asking. Next slide. Okay, once again, that we're having this webinar today. Any questions? And you can ask questions to the whole process up until the date. that this application closes, but we will post an addendum or an amendment, as Jillian stated later. There are several things we already know we're going to have to clear up in this RFP. One, the contact person listed in the RFP or in the solicitation is Alexandria, and actually it will be myself starting this week. So we'll make that adjustment. We also will be limiting the number of awards because of the prorated dollars. So we definitely want to flag that for people. That will be closer to 20 or less awards. I think, and I think we did say 20 on there, but we just want to be transparent here, just given that it's not a full year of programming that's available here. Applications are due on July 7th. That by or I don't even say by, before 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. So not at noon. If you try to upload at noon, the machine will kick you out. It's before noon. You have to have your complete application in and uploaded. And then the program period we're anticipating is starting in the fall. Next slide. Submission tips. Common mistakes we see. Once again, your budget is an exercise on your fiscal responsibility. So we just want you to make sure that you're checking your fringe, depending on what you're using. Are you using volunteers? Are you using staff? Supplies, making sure that you put your budget in the appropriate column. If you're using part of an other share portion, make sure that it's in the right column. I strongly advise you, if you have a financial team or folks that are working on the budget and you're working on this, at some point you should come together and probably talk. We often see people's budgets that don't mirror anything that they said in their actual their submission. So just make sure that there's communication there. And then keep a Word version of the RFP as your working document so you can work and continue if by any chance iSupplier goes down. Once again, strongly advise everybody to download a copy, work offline, and then as you are ready to add those things into iSupplier. You can stop and start, save all the time. You just want to be mindful about that. The other next slide. I think it's on the next slide. Yes. The terms of this contract, once again, September 1 through December 31st of 2027. The cost that we're looking at per youth is $2,300. We anticipate your budget. We've given you some examples within the solicitation on different budgets for 20 to 60. We also want people to be realistic because of the budget. For the budget exercise, we need you to put a budget together for 1 year only. So put the budget together as if it's a full year. And that's what we're evaluating you on. Once again, it's not the final budget that if you are awarded, will do. This is the exercise to see your ability to be able to think strategically about how you put your budget together. One thing I do want to flag, I think it indicates that there's a match here. There is not a match. I want to be clear about the difference but there is a de minimis or an indirect cost that's 15%. Those are two different things. So your financial people should be able to help you figure that out, but there's not a match. And I think that's something we'll change in the amendment. But you're not required to do a 15% match for this RFP. You want to be mindful of titles and who's on the budget. We are looking for staff that's supporting the programming portion. So we shouldn't see a lot of your leadership on the budget at all. It's really the budget should be tied to program staff that will be doing direct service with young people. And lastly, just make sure that your cost category definitions are attached, and the budget instructions are also attached to the solicitation. Once again, I strongly advise you to pull down the budget instructions. It gives very clear guidelines about how to use the form. Do not use another form. You have to use the forms that are provided within the solicitation. Do not send us an Excel sheet. Do not send us a budget. Do not send us an Excel sheet. Do not send us a budget that is for a program this year using one of our city forms. You need to use the budget form that is attached to the solicitation. Next slide. Once again, applications are due July 7th, before noon, Central Standard Time. And then do I have one more slide? I might have one more slide, Jillian. Is that me?
That's all.
That's all. I just want to say before I turn it over to Jillian, who will walk you through as supplier, which is the place where you will put your solicitation. That's where the solicitation you'll need to upload there. Please start as early as possible. Do not wait. We had some glitches last year when we put out some RFPs, and so we want you to make sure that you give yourself as much time as possible. And once again, this video here does not replace the fact that we are asking you to attest in the RFP that you've read the entire RFP from front to back. This does not replace that. You still need to go through the RFP. There are several things that we did a broad stroke here that you need to be able to read. So once again, before you jump in, just make sure that you've read the complete document and that you do not wait to the last minute to try to upload things. So good luck. And I will turn it over to Jillian. We'll see if there's any questions before we get going. I don't see any.
Yeah, we have about 15 questions.
Oh, clearly I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay. Okay. Q&A. Yes, see them now. All right. So the first question is, I see it's a 12-week out of school time program. What is the frequency? You need to tell us what the frequency is. So that should be informed by your curriculum, and you need to tell us what the frequency is. I think in the RFP, we've given a minimum suggestion, but you need to tell us based on the curriculum you've chosen and best practice what the frequency will be and the days of the week. That's part of your strength of proposal questioning. The range of the funding is listed in the actual RFP in the funding section. I think it's 2,300 to 230. Once again, this is a prorated year, so the dollars the listing that's in the RFP is considering the life of the contract. It doesn't necessarily mean what you will get right now because this will be prorated because this is a late start. Funding can support stipends for programming. The thing that I would say is you have to explain why stipends and how is it linked back to the curriculum and development. I'll just say myself, I'm not a big fan of stipends alone unless you can show that the stipends are helping to support their other incentives you can use along the way. But stipends alone, the question you have to ask yourself is, does that get you at the outcomes that you need at the end? The stipends may get them there, but they have to be able to show and change over time from the programming itself. So if you're going to use stipends, you need to just be able to explain how does it link back to the ultimate goals and the outcomes that we want to have. And are there other incentives in addition to stipends that you're going to be supplying? Yes, so the question is, can you please repeat what I said about the MOUs? Yes, you do not need to attach MOUs here. And we prefer not. It's more documents for us to look at. We're not asking for that. We're not requiring that for this RFP. I know some of my colleagues for other RFPs, you are required. You're not required here. If this is a curriculum-based model, we want to see more that you understand the link between the curriculum and the goals around self-identity, wellness, cultural identity. Can the curriculum be bilingual? Absolutely. Once again, this is a culturally competent, gender responsive. We're not judging the curriculum. You have to justify the curriculum you've chosen and how it meets the goals. And that hopefully this can't be a curriculum that, people just created. It needs to be something that's based in social emotional learning, positive youth development, all of those goals. But yes, absolutely can be bilingual. Is there a realistic average award amount you suggest? There isn't. Like I said in the RFP, we've given you a range. We've given you a range of potential awards. We've given you a range of potential dollar amounts. And so that's in the RFP. I just will continue to keep saying this will be prorated this year. So people can put their budgets together once again for a full year of programming. If you are awarded, then we will negotiate what the award will look like for this year. Can the fall period include recruitment with programming to start in the winter? Our expectation is that this program starts September 1 and runs through once again, it's prorated for this year. So you can't be doing recruitment as your activity through September to December. We expect there to be, so this goes back to picking the right number of young people you think realistically you can recruit, thinking about what that programming looks like. We know that's a tall task, but that's why we're looking for people who have experience already sort of doing some portion of this work. But you can't use September through December for recruitment. We want to see programming happening in that time period. So ideally, you should looking at September potentially for a recruitment period, October, November, December for programming pieces. I think, Rachel, your question is the part that's about to come up now, which is Jillian. So we will wait for that. I think that one for Miss Gray Sewell is a repeat question. And I don't understand when you mean, does this include events? Once again, you're telling us what the programming is. Your curriculum should tell you what are the interactive activities. You're telling us kind of what this looks like. So your programming time, you're telling us what that looks like in your thing. So I don't know what you mean by including events. We're not asking you to do events. There might be requirements in your curriculum for reflections or circles or activities. You need to tell us that. But we're not requiring a certain number of events. Once again, everyone's potentially would be using a different curriculum. You need to tell us how you're how you're executing the curriculum and meeting the goals. This presentation will be, we stated at the beginning, this will be available on our website in the coming days. So you'll be
on the YouTube page.
And on the YouTube page, we have a DFSS YouTube page where we post all of our webinars for all of our RFPs in the department. For Robert, for your question about the budget, there's budget instructions attached to the RFP that will give you some guidelines about how to put the budget together. And I think what I would say is you put the budget together for this exercise if it's 1 year. So the reward is for the fall. That's it. If you are awarded, there'll be different instructions there. But you need to tell us if you're going to pick 20 kids and you're going to pull it out for a year, what does that look like for a year in budgeting? Or, that may only be programming for 3 months. Some of you may select 60 kids. That's a different, that's a different beast when it comes to your budget. So the budget instructions are attached to the RFP, and then you'll have to determine the number of young people and the timing, the number of young people and the cost that will help you put together your budget. So I don't want people to think about putting together the budget for a September to December only this year. You're not awarded yet. You are to follow the instructions in the solicitation, which is to put together a budget for 1 full year. That's the exercise that we're asking you to do. So there's instructions there, and then you should work with your finance team in order to figure out what does it look like for us to, including things like incentives, transportation, all of those things. I don't know what you mean by renewable. We have the terms on the RFP. So the terms of this RFP, which are listed in the RFP, which once again, I strongly advise you all to read, is that it's the contract term, the initial contract term is through December 31st of 2027. And there are renewals, there are potential renewals after that for a period of time. So nothing here in the city is renewed in that way. Every grant is competitive. No one is chosen or awarded grants based just purely on the time frame or because you've been doing this a long time. I know sometimes that makes people a little upset, but this is an equal process for us. And so we will at the end of December 2027, we'll determine if we will put out another RFP or if we will execute one of our renewal options at that point. But you have to be awarded in order and in good standing in order for us to be able to award you in the renewal phase of this. And a renewal of a contract doesn't mean the renewal of the amount. Just so for those who've never done work with the city, the contract term is the contract term. The money we very clearly states in the RFP as well as in all of our contract documents that can fluctuate every year. Once again, it's a city process. We go through a budgeting process every year. So I also just want to be realistic about how the city works. Once again, we're not a foundation. We're relying on the dollars that we have in order for us to determine how things are awarded every year. So your contract life can be your contract life. The award amount is not guaranteed every year. Can you confirm that organizations are limited to submitting one application? It's one application because once again, this isn't a if you're doing a multiple program sites, you need to explain why and what that looks like, but that's one submission. It's one application only. There's no need for multiple sites because we're not asking people to pick things like community areas and things like that. If you're going to do multiple sites, you're going to need to answer the question about what does that look like, why, and the purpose of it, and just how many. So once again, we're only asking you to look between 20 and 60 young people. So you'll just need to explain why that's the structure you've chosen in your RFP. If you want to, and it might mean that you're working with other partners or whatever. Once again, it's still one application. We're not awarding by site. You're getting one award for the proposal that you're doing. This is, once again, I strongly advise you all to read the RFP because it's not by site. Can participants enroll in more than one 12-week cohort? Ideally, no. If someone needs additional programming, there's things like mentoring. What we're trying to avoid is people just cycling the same young people through a program. Young people have options, and so they can go through this, and let's say that they say, I really want to maybe go into individual mentoring, or I think I want to do an enrichment. They should then cycle off, and you should connect them to that next phase. Or if they need to do another cycle, you need to be able to explain why. Is it that they need more one-on-one? Is it that they maybe need some counseling or some other peer supports? There are other things. We do not want to see the same young person cycle through the program. It kind of defeats the question of us asking what your recruitment strategy is. So be really thoughtful about how many young people you're proposing to serve and what makes the most sense given your capacity, but also we do not want to see people cycle through multiple times. You're using a curriculum, so everything would be the same if you're cycling the same young person through. This is about an experience that allows them to gain some skills, some well-being, build some supports, build some strengths. We're not trying to build dependency. We're trying to build some self-efficacy and some self-esteem and some drive that then allows them to go, what's my next activity that allows me to exercise or demonstrate these things. So that's the way we want to think about it. You can, to no one's question, you can offer the program sites in different geography areas. Once again, if you're doing that, just explain to us what that looks like. We're assuming that you're going to have multiple recruitment strategies in those places. You'll need to explain those in the RFP. The direct RFP states it's $2,300 per person. Yes. So the way the 15% de minimis works is that should cover additional things on there. So your award should include, when you're coming up with a total based on the amount of young people, your 15% should be included in that. The $2,300 is is the 15% is not included in the 2,300. That's a separate line item in a city budget. So once again, this is not a foundation. You will have to really look at the budget instructions. It's very different than if you're used to applying to a foundation grant, how the city sets up the de minimis. So in the budget instructions, it gives you very clear ideas. If there are additional questions, happy to clear those up, but I strongly advise people to read the budget instructions first. And we're gonna because that will help you figure out the de minimis. The de minimis is anything that's indirect, and within the solicitation itself, we have a whole section that describes what counts in that 15% indirect, or it's often referred to as indirect costs. It's de minimis, whatever your finance people will call it de minimis. In the RFP itself, it has a whole section of what counts, of what you can add into that. Your total budget includes the 15% in that. So with the 2,300. So if you have questions, let me know. But I feel like it's much cleaner in the RFP under the section of budget considerations or financial budgets. It's in there and explains what it is. And the max is 60. And 60 is the number of young people you can apply for in a budget. If you want to do 3, once again, we're awarding in September, and that will be from September to December. But if the award life is through 2027, if you're going to do 60 kids, you have to tell us how you're going to serve 60 kids. If you're going to do 60 kids, you clearly can't do 60 kids in one cohort. So you're going to need to break that up. If you're going to break it up, tell us how you're going to break it up. Tell us when, tell us how, tell us sites. All of those things you can do in the program pieces, if that makes sense. I'm at the question about, can you clarify whether eligibility is determined by a staff member's title or by actual duties to perform? If you are using leadership people to operate this program, you need to explain why and explain why them compared to a staff person. Leadership folks and I don't know what leadership means in your question here. So just as leadership staff member, I don't know who that is. You need to be able to explain the staffing pattern and why. And if it's a leadership person, you also need to put that person's budget on the budget and how they're going to get paid for this and that. That gets tricky. So it's your call. You just need to be explaining the staffing pattern and why you're choosing. And I don't know what you mean by leadership. That can be multiple things, but you're going to need to be able to explain the decisions you made about staffing and why. As I was in here, this thing jumped ahead. Hold on, I got to figure out where it was. I think I skipped one. Sorry. 60 is the max. I think I've answered that one. No, you do not need support letters. Once again, we're not reading any additional pieces. This is so no support letters are needed. You cannot, if you're doing online or hybrid, I would say you have to explain why. The whole point is to build community and wellness. Not saying that can't happen online, but the idea is that this has to be engaged. We didn't say that you didn't, but I think you'd have to explain very clearly why it cannot be in person or some kind of hybrid. If there's some particular reason for that, you just need to be able to explain very clearly why. And then what activities are having or engagement with young people. Once again, you got to look at the outcomes that we're asking for here and how does the hybrid model meet those outcomes? Will you be able to meet those outcomes? Can the program site be a school? I strongly would say no, because once again, the age is 13 and 19. That assumes only young people are in a school. And what we know the data tells us is oftentimes they're they're disengaged. A lot of them might be disengaged in school. There's so many school-based programs. It's your choice. I'm not saying that you can't. I just think you need to explain to us why. School isn't always the most safe environment for young people. So if you're going to use a school, you need to also be able to talk about the safety plan at the school and how they're going to mirror and encourage and support the programming you're doing there. And how that impacts your recruitment. Because then you're also saying you're only looking at young people who are in school. As well. So once again, you just have to explain every choice you make. That's all. Should we present an annual program plan in the narrative? I think so. You all should read the questions and see what makes the most sense for you. I can't say one way or another, but I think the questions are very particular. We at the city, once again, we're not a foundation. We're very particular about the questions we're asking, and we just want you to answer those questions. So anything extra, I don't mean to be disrespectful or make it seem like I'm being flippant, but the fluff piece, it doesn't count. So if we ask you, like, tell us about the programming, we don't need to hear about a particular staff person's journey into that space. We want to know how you're going to do the programming. So it's very pointed, and you're very limited on the number of characters. So I just want to remind people, like, so you'll have to decide, Noah, like, if you want to, if you keep in mind, everything has to be in the narrative. If you attach something to answer a question, it means that you didn't answer the question. You can't answer a question on the application by an attachment. It has to be in the narrative portion, if that helps you make that decision. There's a question about the curriculum. Once again, the curriculum, you're picking the curriculum. You need to read the RFP very clearly. There are clear points of things that we want to have young people have experiences and have exposure to. So your curriculum needs to touch on most of those things. And then we're very pointed about a curriculum may not be able to do all of those things. So you'll have to then figure out how to include those other things that are required. And then I may stop after this, Jillian. I gotta figure out. So the question I said, I think, Robert, you asked about, I just was reminding people that CitySpan is not your database system. So you should have a database system. So when you get to the data questions, we're going to ask you things that CitySpan isn't going to be able to answer for you. So you're going to need to be able to reminding people that you should have a database system for you to be able to answer to respond to. And Jillian, I'm going to stop there so you can continue, and then
Okay.
we'll try anything else. We'll try to answer online, but I'll stop there so you can do your portion.
Okay, and we also have you guys will have another opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the presentation. But at this time, we're going to go into application tips. And our most important application tip that we can provide is to start your application as early as possible and save it as often as possible as you go along. And please be free to download a copy of the RFP in case you experience any technical issues with the city's procurement system. However, please note that all submissions must be submitted in iSupplier. We cannot accept any submissions via email or mail. So again, if you have never done business with the city, please register to iSupplier as soon as possible. Review your RFP narratives and application questions closely. Remember that they align with the scope and selection criteria. And use the information in the RFP for guidance in formulating your answers. There is a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation and spaces. Each response is allotted 4,000 characters. And please try not to use the back button on your browser. You could potentially lose your work. And again, we can't stress it enough to start your application yesterday, meaning to start it as soon as possible so that you can avoid any mishaps any last minute technical issues, we just encourage everyone to start their applications as soon as possible. Some tips for working in procurement. To submit multiple applications for a single RFP, applicants will need to set up a unique user account in iSupplier. The e-procurement system is not capable of submitting more than one distinct proposal per associated email address. Therefore, if you plan on submitting more than one application for one single RFP, you must use separate email accounts for your submissions. You can submit your application and later amend it up until the due date of July 7th at 12 noon. However, we strongly encourage you all to avoid the mishaps and rush by submitting early and plan on your submission taking 30 to 60 minutes. Again, late applications cannot be accepted. And for assistance for e-procurement, you can make use of the hotline at 312-744-4357. They also can be reached via email at customersupport@cityofchicago.org. As far as that hotline, it operates during business hours only, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Just some agency requirements. We require articles of incorporation and any amended articles of incorporation. We also require the IRS affirmation letter, and this is for not-for-profit agencies only. That letter must be dated within 60 days of your submission. You can obtain this letter by calling the IRS directly at 1-877-829-5500. However, if you are a for-profit agency, please submit your original letter from the IRS showing your FEIN number. Your UEI number is required in addition to the central contractor registration, which can be provided from the entity overview page on the sam.gov website. And lastly, a certificate of good standing letter with the state of Illinois is required. We have a labor peace agreement ordinance, which applies to all DFSS and CDPH delegates that have 20 or more employees working for their organization. The only exemptions are hospitals. Contractor must provide written notice to the commissioner or her designee within 72 hours of becoming aware that employees want to organize or that a union seeks to represent employees. You may ask, what is a labor peace agreement? A labor peace agreement is an agreement between an employer and a labor union that ensures that an organizing drive is not impacted by union busting techniques, including employee retaliation, and in return, they will not strike or stop work in a way that will impact human services. For technical assistance, there is a link on the DFS webpage to the RFP as well as training documents. Please see the alert section on our website. And for questions on registration and e-procurement, for technical assistance for delegate agencies, you can contact customer support at cityofchicago.org. They also in the hotline is 312-744-4357. We also have training materials, which includes documents and videos on the cityofchicago.org website under online training materials. And at this time, we're going to delve into how to enter your responses and accepting any amendments in iSupplier. Step 1, you select Create Quote from the drop-down menu in the Actions box, and then you click on Go. This will take you to the application page where you can get started. If the RFP you are interested in has been amended, and in this case it will be, you will need to acknowledge and accept that amendment to start or submit your response. So to accept that amendment, you will click on View Amendment History. Next, to begin the acceptance and acknowledgement process, you must follow these steps. You click on the document number, then you click on the infinity or eyeglass icon to review the amended changes to the RFP. And then you click on Acknowledge Amendment button to acknowledge receipt and understanding of the changes and proceed. And by acknowledging the amendment, you are indicating that you are aware of any changes made to our RFP, as well as any answers to the questions received in the amendment. When you get to this screen, you click on the I accept checkbox, and then you click on acknowledge. Then you click on yes to indicate that you confirm your acknowledgement of the amendment. Finally, you click on the checkbox that you accept the terms and conditions, and then you click on accept to accept them. And that is the final step in acknowledging and accepting the amendment. Once the amendment is acknowledged and accepted, you can move forward with submitting your application. So when you are ready to submit, meaning that you have answered all required questions, you attach all required documents, you start by saving your last draft one last time, and then you click continue. If you are missing information, you will be given an error message up at the top of the page, similar to the example listed on the screen here. Usually that message directs to something left undone in the application. So in the last example, the error message indicated that the lines tab had not been completed. In the example listed here, the error is about an unanswered question in the application or the requirement section. And the quote value refers to your, in this case, missing answer. Once your application is free from errors, you are now ready to proceed and submit. And at that point, clicking continue should push your application into the review and submit phase. Once you see this screen, this is like a summary page, and this is also your last chance to review all of your data and to confirm that everything is accurate. So please use that opportunity to check your attachments, check your answers, and then scroll down to the bottom of the screen to see your responses. And at the very bottom of the screen, you'll be asked to provide an electronic signature. So please be sure to fill in that signature before checking the box. And then you can finally hit submit. Once your application is submitted, you will receive a submission confirmation screen similar to what you see on the screen here. The e-procurement system will also send a confirmation email within 24 hours of your submission. However, please feel free to email me if you desire confirmation prior to that. At this time, we're gonna open the floor for any last questions. And again, our official question deadline is Thursday, June 18th.
Thank you, Jillian. This is perfect. It feeds into this question here from someone, I'm a university professor and my research focuses, or should I create my own vendor registration? One, everyone should, after this call, go check to see if you're in the iSupplier system and who's registered from your agency. If you want to be the point of contact, then you need to create your own registration. If you don't have to, if you're going to submit something, then you need to register. It's not about being a registered vendor. Because once again, it's about you registering as a supplier. If you get awarded, then you will become a vendor in the system. So I want to just be clear based off of Jillian's conversation, people understand. So you post this, when you finish this, you should go online and figure out who's going to be the point of contact. And then that person should go into iSupplier and see, one, if they're already in there, and then two, if not, you need to set up your account today. And to Jillian's point, it takes about anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes up to 7 business days for that account to be put into place. So the time is working against you. We do not discriminate against the type of business. So if you're a university and you want to apply, if you're for profit, you want to apply, we just have to be able to provide all of the documentations that are required per the RFP. And then one of the things that you just need to be mindful of is making sure that you're able to provide those documentation. So being a university doesn't negate you being able to apply for this. I strongly encourage us to think about young people in different spaces outside of schools. I know we focus a lot on school, but there are young women all over the city, various in universities and city colleges and temp, in trades programs. They're all over. So I welcome the opportunity to think about as serving young women in a multitude of spaces. And then the last one is about the IRS letter. What I will say to people is you need to make an attempt to get the IRS letter done. If at that point you are struggling, you need to reach out to us individually and let us know. But I know there was a issue early on in the year. We haven't heard that it's still an issue. So you need to make the attempt to get the letter. And if for some reason you have something in writing from them about the time frame, then you can reach back out to me and I'm happy to have that conversation one-on-one with people. And I think that's it. I don't see any more questions.
Hey,
Julian,
yes.
go ahead. Oh,
No,
go ahead.
I was just about to say, again, the question deadline is the 18th. Before we close out, before we close out, again, I wanted to reiterate for non-programmatic questions. If you have any questions regarding the e-procurement process, how to submit your application, if you're having technical issues, those all can be pointed to customer support at cityofchicago.org, and as well as the hotline 312-744-4357. And you can contact me. My name is Jillian Black. I'm the procurement proposal coordinator, and you can contact me for confirmation if we received your response, and my information is on the screen. For program questions, those could be sent to Lisa, and her information is on the screen.
Thank you, Jillian. I would just also add, what I can't help you answer is how to write your proposal. So I can't tell you, I can't, you have to tell us what the structure is, the location, all that other stuff. I can help you clarify things as best I can, but so programmatic wise, and then and most of the things I need it for those who have my phone number. We didn't put it on here on purpose. Ideally, because everything here in this actions that we're doing is open to FOIA or the Freedom of Information Act. We do need everything in writing. So if you have a particular question, I do prefer that you send me an email so I can respond in writing. So we have written documentation if there are any issues or concerns that are raised earlier. So just make sure, once again, happy for points of clarification. To Jillian's point, we can answer questions up until I like to say usually the day before. If it's July 6th, there's not much Jillian and I can do for you if it's the day before the RFP is due. So we really need you to get off this call, read the entire RFP, and set up your accounts today. That I want to just flag for people that Friday is a holiday. So if you want to do this, you should do it now, because that will add extra time in you getting your iSupplier registration processed. Is that Friday is a holiday for the city. And that's it. Good luck. And we're very excited about this opportunity and being able to offer services to self-identified girls in the city that really focus on their well-being and their cultural identity, and really focusing on safety as well as their growth. So I want to thank you for your interest, and I want to be able to thank you for your interest. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself or Jillian for e-procurement related issues. Contact iSupplier first. If you can't reach them, then reach out to Jillian. Thank you all.
And thank you all.